All right, now to this. Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old man accused of fatally shooting conservative activist Charlie Kirk, was back in court today.
Prosecutors in the case against the suspect in the Charlie Kirk assassination say they have a large amount of evidence. As Claudia Cowan reports, in today's hearing, the suspect's legal team asked a Utah judge for more time to review it.
Into the jail, do we have Mr. Robinson present?
Yes, Your Honor.
Robinson's newly appointed attorney, Kathy Nestor, appearing for the first time as his counsel.
We met this morning with the defense team briefly in our office to talk about discovery. There is a substantial amount of discovery in this case, Your Honor. It's voluminous, to say the least, and we're working on a process where we can exchange information as quickly as possible and be efficient in that process.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. There is a substantial amount of discovery, but there are also a few hurdles for the prosecution, and it requires a change of perspective to really see it and understand it. The most dangerous moment for Charlie Kirk's sniper was when Kirk was addressing the crowd, alert, alive, and vigilant. If Kirk himself had spotted the sniper, just imagine that. If he had spotted the sniper and told the crowd, the sniper would have been toast, dead meat. Does that make sense? So did he see someone in the crowd? Did someone else see? And if no one did, why not? In this analysis, we want to drill deeper into some lingering questions. Number one, what was the actual trajectory and why was it chosen? 2, is there video footage of the sniper taking the shot? 3, how did the sniper get the firearm to the scene without being seen? As we deal with all three questions carefully, one by one, we'll need to examine the footage we've seen and the arguments we've heard a lot more carefully and in a lot more detail. We're going to need to slow down the video footage to a crawl, lean in, and look much, much closer. But before we get to that, the latest news in this case is that a second court hearing has been held for the alleged suspect.
As this case moves forward, Mr. Robinson's constitutional rights will be protected at every stage. He sits before this court presumed innocent, and that presumption remains unless and until each element of every offense charged against him is proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
And how do you prove your case beyond reasonable doubt? Well, with evidence. Now, before we deal with that question of trajectory, thanks very much to Katrina Murphy from New Zealand. Thanks very much for your contribution. Every little bit helps. Also, thank you and welcome to the many new subscribers. If you are finding this analysis worthwhile, interesting, informative, objective, meaningful, please do hit the thanks button. If you've never hit the thanks button, this is your chance. Also want to say, I apologize if I get frustrated with some of you out there. It's frustrating when it feels like people can't see the light. And I feel like you're going to have a certain level of reality, truth, and justice with me, and another level without me.
With me, without me. With me, without me.
Anyway, let's get down to brass tacks. Number one, what was the actual trajectory and why was it chosen? Since the sniper's most direct threat was being seen by his target, who, if you think about it, was virtually the only person facing him. Just have a look at the situation. There's a crowd of 3,000. They are all looking at Charlie Kirk. So all the sniper had to do was position himself behind them and then also take measures to make sure he wasn't seen. Sounds simple, right? So how is the sniper going to mitigate being seen? Well, firstly, by lying down. Secondly, by dressing the same color as his environment. In this case, the roof panels of the Lossy building in this case. And third, and a hunter would know this instinctually, by hiding and concealing himself behind the infrastructure. Hunters have also got to often think about wind direction. And in this case, I think possibly the hunter, the sniper in this case, was thinking about the direction of sight. And I do think he used the corner of the roof of the Sorensen Center quite effectively. Tyler Robinson, I think the prosecution will try to argue, positioned himself just left of that jutting corner. This made it very difficult for Charlie to see him, especially if he approached the sniper's nest low and from the right, crawled into position and stayed low. For all intents and purposes, the shooter succeeded in not being seen on the campus and prior to the shot being fired. Now, for those who believe the alternative conspiracy theory that the trajectory had to be from somewhere else because only bone would stop the bullet from emerging, well, a soft round used by hunters is designed to dissipate energy on impact. If a soft round was used or if the bullet grazed the edge of the roof he was hiding behind, well, either of these would significantly reduce the speed and energy of the bullet, causing it to embed in the neck. Number 2, is there video footage of the sniper taking the shot? Do you notice there is a silver UFO-shaped ventilation outlet that lies between the shooter and the CCTV camera? This could have provided some visual shielding, certainly from the rear. It's likely that the CCTV recorded the sound of the shot, so prosecutors probably will be able to track that exact moment in real time and match it to other footage from other cameras and devices, including cell phones. If we play back the footage moments after the shot was fired, we see a tiny figure running from the far left from the sniper's position. Can you see it? Because he is at the far end of the building and due to the wide camera angle, the figure appears tiny, ant-like. And because he's so far away, whether slowed down or zoomed in, no matter how many times you watch it, it's very difficult to see what's going on because he is so small. Again, the giveaway here will be the sound and the time and what we see afterwards, and then drawing logical inferences from that. Number 3, how did the sniper get the firearm to the scene without being seen? One theory is that the sniper had a rifle down his trousers. Sounds far-fetched, right? Well, this is the obstacle the prosecution are going to have to prove to make their case. We do know he was limping on one leg, and we also know, especially from the second and fourth images in this collage, looking left to right, it does look like something irregular, some irregular shape is inside his right, that's on our left side, his right trouser leg. Let's zoom in on the zigzaggy right leg in this image. Now look closer. Compare the relatively straight lines of his left leg to the very weird irregular lines of the right, the one with the rifle underneath. Even in this image, do you notice the bulge in his lower trouser leg just below his right hand? This is again on our left side. And we see those same strange shapes in this image. It's not just the pocket area that appears filled up, but that area just below it looks suspiciously triangular, directed downward. Could this be the rifle butt? Now, I'm not a gun expert. I did do weapons assembly and disassembly in the military, but I presume if the other half of the weapon, the muzzle and barrel and scope, if that was in the backpack, that could work. That part of the firearm in his trousers would fit in there. I would like to see it demonstrated. I do think it's theoretically possible, but that is something that I think the prosecution will need to show in order to prove it. It's also possible the barrel is inserted in that backpack at a slight angle. They would obviously be using the original firearm and the dimensions of that weapon to make their case. There does seem to be a slight bulge on the left side. Besides half the weapon, the bag likely had a towel, a change of clothes, and important, a screwdriver inside. Why is the screwdriver important? Well, this seems to reinforce this idea that the firearm was assembled in situ on the roof.
Kathy Nestor appearing for the first time as his counsel. She asked the presiding judge for more time to review the, quote, voluminous amount of evidence in the case.
It's interesting to me that on the one hand you hear about voluminous amounts of evidence, while on the other you hear claims that there is no evidence. Which one is it? No. Answer the question right now. Is there a lot of evidence in this case or no evidence? Only one can be objectively true. And I've been in true crime long enough to see from the moon, 1,000,000 miles away, whether there is a lot of evidence or not. In the John Benet Ramsey case, there's a Mount Everest of evidence. And yet you had the district attorney there saying, we do not believe there's sufficient evidence to prosecute this case. So which was true? That there was no evidence or that there was a huge amount of evidence? Which one is it? Are you telling me in this case there's no evidence? Not even enough evidence to bring charges?
Are you out of your fucking mind?
It reminds me, frankly, of the Amanda Knox case, where the same was said. No evidence. Is that why it took 8 years of legal wrangling, 18 if you include the legal wrangling that just happened this year? Because there was so little evidence.
You have paid attention, reported on all of these high-profile shooting incidents in the last decade plus. The through line that I've identified really comes from your analysis. It's despair, right?
It's really striking when you look at these shootings when they happen, and it can be everything from the Kirk assassination to your more typical, unfortunately, high school shooting.
I made that discovery about 7 years ago when I wrote a book profiling many mass shooters. It was called Slaughter.
And immediately you start asking, okay, who did this? What's their story? And it's just so striking over so many years of working with reporters on these pieces that you often, more often than not, find a young man who is socially isolated, struggling to hold down a job.
Despair is a common ingredient, but I think a better word is humiliation. Social death for a social animal is something that feels like despair, but the reality is when you are young and failing in the context of the supremely social settings of high school and college, which is certainly where the Tyler Robinson story is set, certainly where the Charlie Kirk story is set. Well, we are dealing with a social context, aren't we? The context of people rising up, flying their colors and succeeding, gaining agency, gaining traction, while meanwhile you are being bullied, impinged, insulted, limited, whatever it is, and all of that stings. That is often an unbearable feeling, and that feeling is humiliation.
Every fucking day, someone somewhere takes a conscious decision to destroy someone else. If you can't find that stuff in life, then you, my friend, don't know crap about life.
And a young man is more inclined to want revenge for being humiliated by his peers than simply because he feels despair, which after all, well, that despair flows from the original wounding, the original humiliation. I'd like very much to deal with that in more detail in an episode dealing with nihilism. If you think about it, every time there's a mass shooting, we wonder who the shooter was, what color or creed he stood for, and who he represented. But our interest only seems to last until the political gender reveal party. That was an analogy Jon Stewart recently used.
It's America's new gender reveal tradition.
And then we forget. There's a hopelessness and a helplessness we feel in the face of such catastrophe and such clawing entropy. It's real. And there's a right way and a wrong way to deal with it. The wrong way is the politics of grievance, of moaning and groaning and blaming somebody else and feeding conspiracies. So what is the right way? Well, we'll deal with that in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.